sometimes the realization that something that happened in your past is actually the reason why you feel blocked on taking a certain action today, that can be enough to actually get you unstuck. So let me give you an example. So I recently realized that I had this weird thing about like scaling a business. Like I don't want to get too big. I don't want to get too huge. I don't want to have too many clients. I don't want to have, too many people. And I was like, where is that coming from? And I was the oldest of 5 kids growing up. So when I was like very little, my parents had a 3-bedroom house. So we had 7 people in it. It was a tiny house. There was not enough room for everybody. There was not enough time for everybody. My parents would alternate. They would fly to Utah to go visit the family, and they would only bring like 2 kids at a time. They would leave the others at home and they would rotate it. And, this is like my whole childhood. And then we moved to a bigger house later, but there was like never enough time for all the kids all at the same time. There was never enough money for all of the kids all at the same time. There was not enough space for all of the kids all at the same time. So it was like, I was taught this as a young child that you can't have too many kids or else it's going to just be too crowded. So I kind of like learned this association between too many people, too many kids, and that's a problem, right? So if I want to do something, I can't have too many. And this is like the slightest little association. It doesn't even make sense. Consciously as an adult, you're like, oh, that's just something a kid would think. That's like something that that you would think of as a kid. But our mind gets these associations where this equals this. It's like, okay, I had this experience when I was in 6th grade where they laughed at me for something. Therefore, I'm not going to go on video today as an adult. It's like somehow these things get linked up in your mind. And just that realization can be enough for you today to move forward on it. You can be like, oh, okay, that makes total sense why I wouldn't want to do that, because I was afraid that might happen. But then when you realize it, you're like, well, that's kind of silly. That was 6th grade. Now I'm an adult. Now I don't have that same situation. It's completely different. So it's just like noticing these connections in your mind. And I'm really good at that. Like I'm good at asking those questions that give people that awareness. And once they have the awareness, they can just run with it. They're free from that block that they had before. The association that was in their mind that was holding them back starts to loosen, and then it like dissolves and it goes away, and then they're free. So I had a client who realized that he had like ADD as a kid, and he would get very bored with one thing. So the second that he started getting successful at something, he would like switch to a different thing. And he realized that. He's like, oh, wow, I'm doing that again. So just that realization alone seemed to be enough to like free up some energy that he was holding on to that was like, oh, I gotta change directions if I get too successful. So just take a look at that. If you need help figuring out like what it is that's holding you back, what kind of like mental association you have that's causing you to be afraid of going on camera or afraid of doing anything or just nervous with doing any of that, just DM me on Instagram at Anti-Marketing Manifesto, and I would be happy to have a chat with you around that. You don't even have to know like why it happened or what caused it. Like none of that's important. Just the awareness that, oh, okay, that makes sense why I did that. Now I can move forward. That's usually enough to get you going.